Good evening and welcome to the very first ZFA lockdown learning session.
And I found out that isolation is a great place to be reconnected to all the Jews of the world.
Straight into the deep end, I suppose. Well,
I can tell you, Jeanette, it was a chill.
Just triggered this second generational trauma that I had grown up with.
We need to think differently about the Palestinian issue.
Because the tension between the people who revived Hebrew and the pioneers who established Israel, etc.
I have that deep belief that this is a good story. This is an extraordinary story.
The idea was to make room for everyone, but making room for everyone never works by singing Kumbaya.
When one gets to Israel, emotionally, he feels something is impacting his being.
From Ethiopia to Israel takes 3 or 4 hours. But in that 3 or 4 hour flight, you pass by 3 or 4 centuries.
The good news is that the Arabs has realized that there is no chance to defeat Israel.
You cannot actually wait for the world to be equal and to start, yes, to start feeling seen. And
whatever identity we have, whatever we call ourselves, we all have a responsibility to fight racism.
You've got everybody wanting their inch in the newspaper, and if they see that somebody else has got some coverage in the newspaper, they're furious.
If I were prime minister, I would view myself as, yes, prime minister of the citizens of Israel, Arabs and Jews, etc., but also the leader of the Jewish people.
So that's my story in a nutshell.
And all the trips I took until I made Aliyah, I guess took me on a personal identity journey.
This feeling of self-satisfaction in Israel and a little bit of the Israeli can-do kind of bit, like, we got this. We ran this well.
It was known as the famous equation of land for peace. And if you think about it, there's something deeply seductive about it.
They say that in the Middle East, it's hard to predict the past.
Because you're never alone when you're part of the Jewish people and you're part of the Zionist story.
You go to your room, and you go to your room, and that's it.
The goal of the band, as they stated many times on television, was social impact, making people realize acceptability.
It could be yellow or green. He happens to be black, but he doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him because he's a mensch.
We are stories. We are not just ideas. We are alive stories.
Being cheated of seeing justice done to an especially cruel person who not for one moment has expressed regret over the murders that she carried out.
When a rocket falls close to the house of the Minister of Defense, then he understands that it's up to him to make a decision.
So, there is a huge, big, powerful story here. My reasons for going there is I just wanted to follow in the hoofprints of my grandfather.
I knew Rabin. I had followed him. I considered myself then and now a rabbinist. But the first thing I guess you have to do as a journalist and as an editor, when you've got a time confined job to do, you've got a deadline, is to move away from the personal and just move into action.
The impact of Birthright. It's probably the greatest single experiment in Jewish continuity, successful experiment in the last couple of decades.
I remember sitting in the Prime Minister's office helping to set up his Facebook page. It wasn't there.
Israel in the future is not going to look like Israel today. And this is a major challenge. I mean, the future has not been written yet.
That's it for tonight. Have a great week, and thank you for joining us on Lockdown Learning.